Hi everybody, myself Mr. C.S. Mane, HOD Mechanical, ICRE Gargoti. We in this lecture will the part 2 of the metrology, basics of metrology. We'll study in this the elements of metrology. As we know, there are many elements to study the metrology. There are basic two elements of metrology. The foremost or the prime most important element of metrology is the standard. The standard. As we know, metrology is nothing but the science of measurement. We studied in the definition of metrology. Metrology is the science of measurement. To study metrology, we must know the concept, that is the element of metrology, the standard. Okay. Then what it means by the standard is nothing but the most basic element of measurement is standard, without which no measurement is possible. Okay. Standard is a physical representation of measurement. Standard is a physical representation of unit of measurement. Okay. Then different standards have been developed for various units, including fundamental units as well as derived units. As we know, there are fundamental units are there. What are these fundamental units? The length, mass and time is the fundamental units. Okay. And the derived unit means what? Derived units means the units which are derived or basis on the primary fundamental units. Okay. So these are two types of units. Okay. Then what is means by these primary standards are, we'll go somewhat depth to the primary standards. Okay. They are primary standards. They are the material standards preserved under most careful conditions. Under most careful conditions, these are preserved. These are not used directly for measurements, but are used once in 10 or 20 years for calibrating secondary standards. As we know, there are two standards, primary standards and secondary standards. These primary standards are maintained or preserved in a careful environment, careful conditions, and may be used once after 10 or 20 years of long period. Okay. Then for calibrating secondary standards, okay, maybe the international prototype meter or imperial standard yard. These are the primary standards. Then what is meant by the secondary standards, which are derived from primary standards? These are the close copies of primary standards with respect to design, material and length. These are the these are carbon copies of primary standards, but with respect to design, material and length. Okay. Then any error existing in the standard or in these secondary standards is recorded by comparison with primary standards after long interval. Okay. If any error persists in the secondary standards, then these are compared with primary standards and that error may be removed. Okay. They are kept at a number of classes under great supervision. These secondary standards, as these are being used occasionally at many places in industries or nationwide variety of labs, then these must be kept at a number of places under great supervision and serve as a reference for tertiary standards. There are third category of standards, that is the tertiary standards. Then these tertiary standards may be calibrated by secondary standards. And as we know, the secondary standards are calibrated from primary standards. Primary standards are kept at precise conditions. Secondary standards are as a carbon copy of that primary standards, but may be placed at different places and may be used occasionally for calibrating of tertiary standards. Okay, so these also acts as safeguards against the loss or destruction of primary standards. These may be used as a subsidiary standards in case of loss of primary standards. So it is also important standards. Okay, the that means the standard is one of the important element of metrology, because metrology dealing with elements. So workpiece, second element is a workpiece. As we know, in mechanical industry or any industry, we process the workpieces of variety of size, variety of capacity, variety of lots of workpieces, complexity of workpieces are also there. So these workpieces may be processed at different engineering purposes, but this is the one of the element that should be considered as one of the important element of metrology. Variations in geometry and surface finish of the measured part directly affect measuring systems repeatability. Measuring system repeatability is very important in engineering industry. And if we want to achieve the repeatability of measurement, then the measuring system repeatability is very important. Then we must focus on the geometry and surface finish of that measured part or that workpiece. Okay, then there are a variety of kind of materials are also available. If we consider the compressible materials like plastic or nylons, that may pose a different types of problem, that any gauge pressure will distort the material. As we know, the gauge pressure applied by that metrological instrument may affect the accuracy. So this can be avoided by fixing of gauging pressure as suggested by the industry, or as we know in floating carriage micrometer. There is one class of micrometer available, that is the floating carriage micrometer. We fix the gauge pressure that should not produce the impression of that anvils on the workpieces. Impression of that anvils on the workpieces. Okay, that means we are going to fix the gauge pressure of that instrument or the floating carriage. Likewise, in case of these compressible materials, that may pose, nylon like materials, plastic materials may pose different type of problems of gauging pressure. Impressions may create of that instrument, but this can be avoided by fixing that gauge pressure to a certain level. Okay, that may be suggested by the manufacturer or by that industry. Okay, thank you.